So, welcome to our meeting, our September meeting, our 1-year anniversary meeting of the PowerShell user group. And I think people are waiting in the lobby. So, yeah, thank you for admitting. I think PowerShell and SQL is meh, meet DBATOOLS. Very good presentation title, by the way.
Thank you.
Let me introduce myself. I'm Konstantin Hager. I work as a consultant / PowerShell enthusiast / DevOps engineer and so on. All of my job. I don't care about my job title. So I work for COC AG, and we are based in near Munich, 1 hour away from Munich in the south, so very near Austria. My Twitter handle is here and the Twitter handle of the user group. So if you want to reach me or ask questions, you can do that. And I'm also on LinkedIn. Search for my name and I think we can connect if you want. Some housekeeping. I think everyone does that. The session will be recorded, so I will post the YouTube link, the YouTube channel where the video will be posted. I hope next week. Please mute your microphone and ask questions to the chat or unmute. I think Rob has no problem with that, with unmuting.
For sure.
Yeah, today's speaker, we already see him as Rob Sewell. I think he can introduce himself if he takes over the session. And yes, the stage is yours, I think.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So let's do that bit.
Yeah, I see your screen. Yeah.
Perfect. Excellent. That's always good start. So yeah, my name's Rob, and please feel free to ask questions. As the more that you get out of this, the better. We'll have some fun. Don't be shy, put it in the chat or feel free to unmute. We can go down as many rabbit holes as you like. I love this presentation. It's never the same. So I'll put this up on the screen, the link to the PowerShell Conference Europe website. So psconf.eu. Hopefully, depending on all this stuff, we're going to be in Wien. So that's Vienna for English speakers, in Austria in June, and we're going to hold the European PowerShell Conference. So we've moved from Hanover. We've been in Hanover for the last 4 years, I think now. So we're going to go to a different country, try a different way of doing things, but still the same PowerShell conference. So the most important thing, if you're interested, is to come over here and click on this I'm interested box, and then you'll get updates, you'll get to know about the tickets, and things will be happening soon. Anyway, we came here to do this. So my name's Rob. I'm a consultant. I do stuff. Basically, most of the time, I help people to automate things. I generally involved in infrastructure in the data services world. So Azure Data Factory, SQL Server, Synapse, all of these sort of things. We just help make people do stuff. You can get in touch with me, connect on LinkedIn or via Twitter. That's always a good place to get hold of me. I'm lucky in that I'm a MVP for data center management and for data platform. And that's because I'm working both PowerShell and the data community. And it's a wonderful place to be. Let's do that. So we're going to talk about DBATools, and hopefully folk here at the PowerShell user group, you've heard of PowerShell in a month of lunches, and then all of the mass number of other month of lunches books that have come across. And we also have DBATools in a month of lunches. So myself, Chrissy Lemaire, Jess Pomfret and Claudia Silva are the authors, and it's still in MEEP at the moment. So MEEP means that Manning believe that we're going to finish. So we've got 20, I think we have 20 chapters written out of 22 that we've got planned, and I think they're at about 16 or 17 have been released. So the rest are going through the editing process. If you wish to go and get the book, then there is the link, beard.media/book. Nice and easy to remember. Other thing you want to know is, how can I see what you're going to show me? Well, it's easy. All of my presentations you can find at beard.media/presentations. This one is the one for the New York PowerShell user group, because otherwise it would just be a copy paste job for this one. And the notebooks that I'm going to use you can find at beard.media/notebooks. Now that must be a capital N, because I don't know, short oils are hard somehow, but a capital N will work. So we're going to talk about DBATOOLS. Well, what is DBATOOLS? So this person, Digital Own, many years ago, 5 years ago probably, said, you've just made it easy. And they put it better than I think anybody else has since. But I like to think that DBATOOLS really, it's about making sure that your DBA looks like this. They want to be able to sleep peacefully. Because DBATOOLS was started as a migration project, and enabling your DBA to go to sleep whilst the migration is happening, that's a wonderful place to be. Also, I love cats. Like all good projects, we have a website, dbatools.io, and there you can find all the information that you need, including all the documentation, how to interact with the team, how to be able to tell us new things that you'd like or things that don't work. They're all available to you there, dbatools.io. Where did DBATools come from? It started life in 2014 when Chrissy Lemaire needed to migrate some SharePoint databases from one SQL instance over to a different one. And she looked around and thought, well, there must be a way of automating this. She knew PowerShell, somebody must have written something, and nobody had. So being Chrissy, she then wrote something. And what she wrote was a script to migrate the SQL Server and all the logins between instances, because that's what she needed to do. And she published it up on GitHub and indeed on Script Center. It was still there right up until Script Center went away. And she used it for a couple of years, and then after a discussion with some of the folk from the PowerShell team, and they said, well, open source this, make it a module, get other people to help. And so in June of 2016, she started going and asking people within both the data and the PowerShell community to help her to add features to this module. And the first feature came from Claudia Silva, and he wrote expand SQL tlog responsibly. That was the function that he wrote to enable you to be able to make sure your transaction log was expanded in a good way. I wrote this second community function, and gradually more and more people came along. And then we thought, well, we need to be able to actually communicate with each other, collaborate. We're all in different parts of the world. How can we do this? And we chose to use Slack because that was the best option to have at that time. So we created this Slack channel, and what we wanted it to be for was just for DBATools folk to be able to talk to each other and work out how to make things better. And within 5 hours we had 100 members, and it has now expanded way beyond that. and it is now a place where you can go. There's 8,000 or 9,000 registered members, and there are channels there for all sorts of things. So I should imagine if you want to talk about reporting services, then it's a place where you can be. There will be people there who can certainly answer those questions, or Purview, or Power BI, or Power BI Report Server. All of these things are there. So it carried on, and by January of 2017, we got 32 contributors, and we had a problem because we had no consistency. So some people use -SQL instance, some people use -SQL Server, some people use -server, some people use -host. Everything was named in a different way. So Chrissy sat down and wrote this blog post and said, we're going to sort this out. January 2017, she said, it's going to be a new year and we're going to start the road to 1.0. And she said, we expect that the code freeze will take about 2 months. So in March of 2018, 14 months later, notice, we had also written and released DBA checks, and I was very firmly that this should be MIT licensed. So we made DBATools MIT licensed in March, so it's available for anybody to use. Super. And then run forward a few more months, more than a year, to the June of 2019. So what's that? That's 2.5 years after the 2-month code freeze. DBATools 1.0 was released in Germany, in Lingen at Data Grillen. Oh, fantastic. It was super pleased. We were really happy there. And we go forward to November of 2019, just before all the craziness really hit us. We had 400,000 downloads, 15,000 commits. DBATools was nearly 400,000 lines and had 654 functions. And there were 176 people who contributed to this module. And I think that's really important to say, is that when people say, should I use DBATools? Is DBATools worth using? And I'll say, well, it started with this amazing woman and has just carried on. And all of these people have put their time and their effort, because nobody's being paid for this. It's all been done voluntarily in their own time, to create a significant number of functions to make it easy for you to use DBATools to interact with SQL Server using PowerShell. And it carries on and on and on and on and on. I mean, that was 1.1.0. I think we're already at 1.1.23, I think was released yesterday. So it just keeps moving forward. Best of all, over 1 million downloads. So it's proven, it's tested, it's used. And testing is very important, because before we release DBATools, it goes through a series of processes where we make sure that the functions are doing what it is that is expected. So Christy is very hot on integration testing. So the release process actually spins up 2 SQL instances and migrates databases and logins and agent jobs and things between them, and make sure that everything happens as it should do. So once you think DBATools is the tool for me, how can I use it? Well, it's just a PowerShell module. So you get it from the PowerShell gallery and you go install -module DBATools. Now, of course, if you're using Windows PowerShell, you might need to use scope current user if you can't run it as admin. Of course, we don't want to always install our PowerShell modules on machines that are connected to the internet. So if you need to put DBATools on that sort of machine, of course, keeping stuff safe, keeping stuff secure. DBATools code is signed. And what that means is that we guarantee that the code that you see in GitHub for that release is the code that has been put to the PowerShell module. It doesn't mean that it's the code that is on your machine, because anybody can go into that file system and change it. But it's as good as we can get. And this certificate has, I think there are 4 people who have access to the key. There's myself and Chrissy and a couple of others. And we do that at deployment time. We sign that code and then it is pushed up to the PowerShell gallery. But back to our fortress. What you got to do, it's a PowerShell module after all. Save module, DBATools, put it to a path. And then do whatever bits and bobs you have to do to be able to carry that zip file over to your fortress. And then place it in C program files, Windows PowerShell, or PowerShell for PowerShell 7 /modules. Or if you just want it for a single user, maybe just for your SQL Server service account, then you can use their profile and go to Documents, Windows PowerShell, or PowerShell /modules. So as with all great coders and developers, we love writing help. We are awesome at writing documentation. That's a complete lie. We're actually quite good at automating the creation of documentation. So before any of our code is allowed to be merged, we run a series of tests. Some of those tests ensure that all of the every single function has good help written. So we know that if you type get-help and the name of a command, you're going to be able to get the command. And beautifully, because of automation, we use that exact same thing to generate a documentation site so that you can go and search on the web if that's what you want, to be able to get all of those details as well. And it's open source, like I've said, all of these contributors, all of these users. But if you go to the SQL Server community Slack channel, you will be able to find people who will be willing to help you. So there's a DBATools channel there. It's a great place to go for how do I do this? But also, the internet is your friend. There are so many blog posts out there and so many presentations of people showing you how to do various things with DBATools. I say a wise man can learn more from a foolish question than a fool can learn from a wise answer. So if you have a question, ask. Because if you have a question, undoubtedly somebody else is going to have a question as well. So feel free to jump in and see what's going on. So there are 654 functions or whatever it is. So we're going to try and get through all of those in the next 45 minutes to an hour. Let's see how quick we can go. So buckle up. There's the link just in case you need it whilst you're watching. Otherwise, let's have some fun. So all of my demos that I'm going to show you are done in such a way that any of you can follow along or can go back and do it yourself on your own machine. As long as your machine's got Docker on it, and you can open ADS. This is Azure Data Studio. It's a bit like Visual Studio Code because it's based on the same code base, but this is for data professionals because it has a bit more color to it. You can use these .NET notebooks or not .NET notebooks, and you can run this exact demo as many times as you want and learn how to use DBATools. The first thing that we need to do is we need to create our containers. So we're going to set some little variables just so that we've got something for the entirety of these demos. There's some directories in your user profile and a credential file so we can connect to our containers. If you're doing this the first time, you probably need to pull these containers down from the Docker registry. Otherwise, you can just run the Docker compose up. And as you can see, within a few seconds, it's going to create our network and create us 2 instances. Anything goes wrong, then you can go and start having a look. But we'll We'll just run this one and just test that we've actually got a connection to the containers. Sometimes with these new containers, it takes a moment for them to come up, but no, we have a connection to the containers. Not even enough time for me to take a drink. So we've got some containers, we've got some instances. If we wanted to have a look at those, we can just log in up here, and you see we've got 2 instances, and they've got AdventureWorks, Northwind, and pubs. Because DBATools supports SQL instances from version 2000 all the way up to whatever comes next. So we have to be able to work with the pubs database from all of those years ago, but it will also work all the way up to SQL Server 2019. We're running on a container right now, so it works with SQL Server running in Ubuntu. It will, in general, mainly work with Azure SQL databases. Obviously, not everything is available, because in Azure, not everything is available. It'll work with managed instances because they're just SQL servers as well. So again, not everything is available because not everything is available. But you can see that SQL Server is as compatible as we can make it with as much of the data platform that you interact with. So let's explore. We'll start with an introduction. So when we open up a new notebook, we've got to wait up here for this kernel to load. The kernel is the type of language that this notebook is using, and then we can say, well, we could click on this, but honestly, I generally don't, because when we have a look, there are 625 functions, so that would just take ages to list. Now with 625 functions, it's pretty hard to remember what they are and what they do. And in fact, frequently, Chrissy and myself and other people that use it all the time will forget what the name of a command is, or whether there's a command that does this thing. So we wrote a command to find the commands, and it's called find-dba command. So if we want to find all the backup commands, well, find-dba command with the tag of backup is going to show us all the things that are to do with backup. Maybe we could look for everything to do with restore, or all the migration commands. Remember, DBATools started as a migration module. So here are all the things. These copy commands are fantastic for moving objects from instance to instance. You could look for a pattern. User, anything to do with user in the synopsis or in the help or in the name of the command. Here are all the things that can interact with a user. Oh, there's loads of them. Look, Bob. And of course, you can just use PowerShell. So this is just a little thing for PowerShell. Then just use get-command with a module of module name and search for the name. And to be honest, this is the one I use the most, because this is the one that I use for all of the PowerShell that I use. So it just becomes muscle memory to me. Again, this is not a specific DBATools instruction, but always use get help. If you find PowerShell commands and modules that don't have good help, then reach out and tell the author, we need to have some better help for this. I'll create you the help messages, do a commit and contribute to the open source. But help should always be there to tell you how to do things. So I've got this cool little thing here, and it's another way that I work. Let's see whether that works or not. It doesn't work in the notebook because of opening up a new GUI. But what we can do is if we run that command, it'll then let us pipe out our results from our find-dba command into Outgrid View. And Outgrid View is fantastic because now I could look for something like, I'll start searching for jobs, and immediately it starts to filter the results. Or maybe it's just something to do with trace file, and immediately my results start getting filtered, and I can choose that and I can press OK, and then sure enough, what it's going to do is going to give me my help for that particular command. And as you can see, there's a lot of good help, and there are always examples. So you can see, what am I going to do? How do I want to use this command? Okay, so that's how to get DBATools. That's how to find out how to use DBATools. Now you're good to go. You can go and do everything. You don't need to listen to the rest of this, but hey, backups and restores, they are the most important thing to any SQL DBA. So we will create ourselves our connection to our containers for this notebook. And here's another thing that we can do. So these days, user accounts are quite often not allowed access to the directories or the shares where we store our backups. It's a good security practice. We don't need our user accounts to be able to get to them. However, it makes working out why SQL can't get to that place more difficult, because we don't know if the files exist there, or we don't know if SQL Server itself has got access to that place. So not just for backups and backup shares, but also things like agent jobs or SSIS processes which need to read from a share where a third party drops things in from an FTP site or whatever. All of these processes that we build, the SQL Server account needs to be able to get there, but the users should not be allowed because it's personal data or it needs to be protected. Well, get DBA file will access that share or that path using the credentials of that SQL Server instance. So we're going to run get DBA file, and we're going to look for SQL instance 1. I'm going to look in the backup path, and you can see I've got a dummy file there so that there is something to see. And that's cool. There's nothing in our backup directory. That's probably not so cool. So let's have a look and see when the last time SQL was backed up. So we can do get DBA last backup, and we'll pass in both SQL instances. In general, most of the DBATools commands will be able to take an array of SQL instances. So you can do as many as you want. So we're doing both SQL 1 and SQL 2 just in one command here. We like to make things easy. And we'll format the table to get the results, and you'll see that yeah, so the last time these were backed up was 2019 or even 2017 or perhaps never. So it's not quite so good, is it really? So occasionally this doesn't happen so much these days, but when I first wrote these notebooks, you'd sometimes get issues with some permissions. So I put the information in the notebook. It's a really good way of using the notebook to be able to document our code. So if we go to a new instance, or we're given control of a new instance, and we realize that there's no backups, perhaps the thing we want to do most of all is, well, actually, I want to make sure your databases are backed up, because that's kind of important. Well, look, it's this simple. Backup-DBA database, the name of the SQL instance, and a path to where you'd like it backed up. So we'll just do this. Now in the notebook, it looks a bit funny. The write progress doesn't come out quite correctly, but what it is doing is it's backing up every single one of those databases to that path. And by the time I've scrolled through the write progress, it's done. And it gives us our output, it tells us the name of the database, the SQL instance, what type of backup we did. We did a full, how big it was, and how long it took to do it. So, all right, that's good. Let's prove it. So we'll have a look with get DBA file in our directory again, and there is a list of all of our backups. And you'll see I didn't pass in anything else, but our backups have been named the name of the database and then a timestamp, so we can run this again and again. If you want to have a look at the volumes on your own machine, then you can see these are just stored in your user directory and the files are still there. Well, if I've got 500 databases and I'm going to keep on running this, I probably don't want to put all of my database backups in the same directory. You probably want to have a directory for every database. Well, that's okay. Let's just do this. We'll check SQL instance number 2 this time. That one's just got a dummy file, so there's something to see. And now we're going to say, right, I'm going to back up DBA database, SQL instance, SQL 2. There's my path. I'm going to compress the backup this time because that makes sense to make sure it's using less space. And I'm going to use this create folder parameter. We'll switch that one in, and again we get this funny write progress, but it will still come through. Ta-da! There are our databases all backed up. If we look in the directory this time, you'll see that we've got a directory for every database with the file inside it. And if we were to run it again, they would just go into the same place. So now let's use get DBA last backup and let's check when our databases were last backed up. So there we go. Now I'm happy. Now my databases have just been backed up. Everything is good. Of course, if you want to use Ola Hallengren's solution for your backups, well, that's cool. DBATools supports the community and the community supports DBATools. And we went to Ola and we said, hey, Ola, can we add in an install script for your maintenance solution into DBATools? We went, yeah, sure. And it was the same with other community people who build tools that you love. You know, Adam Mechanics, who is active, Brent Ozar's Blitz responders, sorry, first responder commands are all available to be installed. We can just run, there we go, install that. It's going to go and get the latest version of the maintenance.sql script, and it's just going to go and install it in the master database. We're just going to put in our file directories and our backup locations and our cleanup times. And if we now go and have a look at our agent jobs, get DBA agent job, and that's going to show us that you've got pretty much those are Ola Hallengren's SQL agent jobs. So let's start some of those jobs. So we've got our system databases full and we've got our user databases full. If we set those and we go to start, there we go, says that they're started, says they're executing, and now we can just check. There we go. So I've got it right. So get DBA agent job, the SQL instance, SQL number one, we'll get those jobs that we listed, and then we're going to output the instance, the name, the current run status, and the last run outcome. So the full user database is executing, hasn't ever run before, and the system databases, well, they succeeded. So if we run that again, now both of them have succeeded. So we can go and have a look in our path. And you'll see this time we've got our backups, our host, instance, SQL1. We've got this funny thing because we're running in a container, and then we have the name of the database and /full, Ola Hallengren's usual file path structure. And there is a database backed up by Ola Hallengren, which was installed by DBATools, and the agent job was started by DBATools. It's easy, it's great. So warning, never, ever, 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 ever do this in production unless you really want to. In fact, not just production, but test or UAT or any database on anybody's machine anywhere that's not yours, okay? Because I don't want you saying, well, Rob said it was okay. Rob said it was not okay. Don't ever run this command. Okay, this command says, get me all the databases on SQL instance number one, apart from the system databases, and then use this magical command, remove DBA database. And in fact, worse even than that, I'm going to say confirm false. Don't even ask me, just do it. Right? I'm not interested. I just want them gone. So they're all gone. We refresh our connection and have a look. SQL1's databases, they've all gone. So when you don't get a result from DBATools, it means there was no result to get. So we asked DBATools to get us all of the databases on SQL instance number one, but not the system databases, and then tell me the name. And DBATools went, sure, went to the SQL instance, found all the databases that weren't system databases and gave us the name. Because there aren't any, nothing came back. So just remember that when you're thinking about how you're going to code with this, if you're building more complex structures, because the PowerShell team have different views to me on how this should be done, and different commands for different technologies will do different things. So sometimes you get an error, sometimes you get a non-terminating error. So what we do is say nothing. Okay, so we've lost all of our databases. Oh no, now everything's going off. We're getting Teams messages. Our system is going crazy. All of our alerting and monitoring is shouting at us, telling us we've got no databases. How can we get those back again? Well, remember how easy it was to back stuff up? It's that easy to restore. So we can restore DBA database. We can point it at an instance and a path, and we'll say, go, do it, please. Just restore me my databases. I'm not interested in anything else. Just get me as good as you can get. Now, this would work even if there were 500 files there inside directories and they were all logs and diffs and everything, because Stuart Moore, fantastic person, has worked out the logic to be able to do restore header only on all of these files, to grab the LSN, to be able to put everything in the right order, so that we will restore the latest full and the latest diff and then all of the log files that we need afterwards. It's really, really super. So I've done it in a silly way because I've deleted all my databases and then restored them. But you can imagine how quickly you could use some sort of disaster recovery if everything's gone. As long as you've got your backup directory, you can just point DBATools at it and say, just get me everything back as good as you can. Excuse me. Of course, if you want additional functionality with your restores, you want to restore with recovery, you want to stop at a certain time, all of those things are available to you. But with one line of code, you can just grab it, push it back. And now we need to prove it. Well, okay, SQL 1 didn't have any databases. Now we run the same command, our databases exist. Let's get rid of them again. We'll drop them the same way. Now this time we can restore them from Ola Hallengren. And we can do that just by pointing again at the Ola Hallengren directory and just say, hey, this time it's a maintenance solution backup. So you know these backups have been created by Ola's scripts. Then we don't need to do so much validation. We can go and trust what's going on there. And lo and behold, when we get down to the bottom of all this write progress, when we have a look, ta-da, we got our databases again. Okay. So maybe you want to know when our databases were last restored. So get DB restore history, and we'll point at the SQL 1 instance, and we'll just grab the last time that they were restored. And now you can see that AdventureWorks was restored, yeah, pretty much the same time. This is UTC because it's running in the container 1841. So we've got all of these databases and the last time that they were restored. So that's cool, yeah. Any questions on backup and restore? If not, I'm carrying.
I have a short question.
Go for it.
For the restore, do we need to do the backup also with the DBATools, or can we use normal backup, let's say?
As long as it is a native SQL backup, you can use it. Yeah, so if your backup's being created by some magical backup tool that does wonderful things, DBATools doesn't know how to restore from it. If your backup is just a SQL backup, then DBATools can restore it.
Would the tool recognize this if the backup is valid also? What happens if not?
So if it's not, I can show you exactly what happens if not. You remember in my directory, I had a text file that was just there to show that there was something there. And when we pointed at the, where are we? When we pointed at the directory, that'll be the maintenance solution one. That's why I can't find it. When we pointed at the directory, it went and scanned all of the files. And when it found a file that was not a backup, it said this. There we go. So can you let me make that a bit bigger so we can see? So it says, problem was found with this file, and this is my text file, so it's not actually a real database backup. It says the media family on device blah 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 is incorrectly formatted. Okay, and so it just says I'm terminating abnormally, and it didn't stop. It carried on doing all of the rest. Yeah, so that's what is going to happen if it finds a file in that directory that it's scanning that's not a real database backup, because you might have log files or you might have other things in that directory. I know what you do. I've seen your directories and your shares. So does that answer your question, Thomas?
Yes, of course. Thank you.
Welcome. Okay.
Also really good for doing point in time restores. So just noticing.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's have a look at some availability groups. So DBATools works really well with availability groups. Containers not quite so, as we'll see. So again, don't ever do this in production, but we've done it once already, so twice already, so we'll do it again. But this time we're going to take away all of the databases on SQL instance number 2. And if I wasn't on a container, then I could literally just run this. I could just set my parameters. I'll have a primary, a credential if I need it, a secondary. I give a name for my availability group, which databases I would like to be added, my cluster type, a seeding mode and a failover mode, and away we could go with new DBA availability group. So brilliant, except it doesn't work on containers because containers are special, bless them. But it's really cool because it means that I can show you some of the other commands in DBATools. So the first thing we need to do when we create a availability group is create a master key on each of the instances. So we'll just run new DB master key, and we've got a master key. Now we need to create our certificate on our SQL instance number 1, and then back it up and then put it back on SQL instance number 2. So we're going to create a new certificate, and then we're going to back it up. And now we're going to grab the backup of that certificate and use restore DBA certificate and restore it onto the other side. Easy. We now need to have some endpoints. So we need to create our mirroring endpoints on both of those instances. And then we also need to start them. So we're going to run a new DBA endpoint and then start DBA endpoint on each one of our nodes. And there we go. Those have just started. And now we have to use some T-SQL. But that's cool because it means you can see that any T-SQL that you've got, you can just use invoke DBA query and you can run that as well. So we'll just run that. We're just going to do an alter availability group, grant create any database, and then on this secondary, we're just going to add things in. So this is really neat because this means that I can run commands against multiple instances all from the same script. And in fact, quite often I will write PowerShell script files which I will use in agent jobs, which go and connect to different instances, because it's much easier than trying to get an agent job to be able to go and connect elsewhere. So now we should have an availability group on our 2 SQL instances running in containers. So we'll use get DBA availability group, and there we go. You can see that it's there. Let's have a look at our replicas. So we see we've got our replicas, and we can see that we're not synchronizing at the moment. Okay, why are they not synchronizing? Got no databases. If we have a look, get DBA AG database, there's no databases. So let's add some databases. We'll also do this. We'll have a look at our compatibility level. Get DBA DB compatibility. It's going to show us the compatibility level of all of our databases. So we just need to make sure that we've got compatibility. Remember, all of this was back to SQL 2000. So if we're going up to AGs, perhaps we need to make sure that we've we've brought our compatibility up, but everything seems to be good. Now, to make sure that our databases are able to be part of an availability group, we need to make sure that they are in full recovery mode. So we'll have a look at our databases. So we're going to look at get DBA DB recovery model. And this time we're going to look for our 3 databases that we want to put into our instance. And we're going to see that our recovery model is just simple. Okay, so then we can use get DBA database and pipe it through to set DBA recovery model and set the recovery model for all of those databases to full. And it took way less time than it took me to explain what was going on. So brilliant, excellent. Now all of our databases are in full recovery mode. We can add them to the availability group. Hold fire now. If we have a look at get DBA recovery model, it says that all of our databases are full. But if we test, so DBATools has got a lot of test commands as well. If we test our recovery model, you'll see that because we haven't taken a full backup since we changed our recovery model, that the actual recovery model of our databases is still actually simple. So all we need to do to fix that is to back up our databases. Well, we know how simple it is to do that. We can just use backup DBA database. And this time we're going to do it with a full type, and we're going to do it with a log. So we'll create a full and a log database backups for our databases, and we'll scroll all the way down past the horrible progress. And now when we test our recovery model, everything is full. Brilliant. So now we can just add them into a database, and this we can do with DBATools. So we can use the add DBA AG database, really useful when a new thing comes online. So if you've got clients where when a new client gets added, a new database gets automatically created and you want to put it into availability group, well, just have something like this running and just check get DBA database, compare it to get DBA AG database, and if anything's different, great, add DBA AG database. I had that running in an agent job every 20 minutes, and it meant that 20 minutes after, well, maximum of 39 minutes after a new client had been added, their database was into the availability group. And also there were other things that we could add in and make sure it's in the right groups for various bits and bobs. So we'll just add that in. There we go. We'll add those databases in and it'll just start doing the seeding. And now you can see a little database. There's not much going on. They're all synchronizing. Well, that one's synchronizing, and indeed this one is synchronizing as well. Well, let's, oh, and this one. Oh, scroll. There we are. So let's have a look. We need to refresh our connection. So you'll see that I've been using Connect DBA instance. And what Connect DBA instance does is it sort of pre-warms up my connection, goes and gets me a connection to my instance that I can then reuse. And it means that I can save on the typing I need to do. I keep putting in my credential. But because we've just changed everything, we need to go and have a look to refresh it. And this is the most reliable way of refreshing it. So now when we look at our AG databases, you can see that now we've got AdventureWorks and we've got Northwinds and we've got pubs, and they're all in the availability group and they're all synchronized. So that's really cool. If you want to, you can go and have a look in SSMS, but this is a PowerShell user group, so I'm assuming that you trust me when I say that PowerShell is telling the truth. So we can suspend our AG database, and in general, even though I haven't shown it much in this demo, before DBATools does something that's damaging in some way, it will ask you for confirmation. So when I was doing those remove DBA databases, I just put confirm true and go do it. Sorry, confirm false, just go and do it. But in general, without putting anything in, then yeah, actually we do want to make sure that we do. Oh yeah, actually we'll put an MV and then I won't get asked for the other database as well. So we're just going to suspend our movement. So now these databases are not synchronizing. And if we have a look at them, you'll see that over here it says not synchronizing because we've suspended them. You could also just examine it in that way. just a PowerShell command with a where clause. And now we can do this. So obviously the last time I was doing this demo, I added in this bit because somebody asked me a question. But let's just resume our availability group movement. And it's as simple as running resume DBA AG DB data movement. Easy to do, not so easy to say. We can add things, then we can remove them. So if we want to just remove a database from our availability group, it's as simple as using remove-DBA AG database. Now if we go back and refresh our connection and have a look, and we'll see that our databases are, that's not quite what I expected. Let me check that again. So you can't do that because you don't exist. So let's try you again. This should be in a restoring state, but for some reason my connection is not come through. But let's try that. There we go. So that's now showing it correct. So we've checked the databases on our instance apart from our systems database, and now we're just asking them for the availability database synchronization state and the group name, and we can see that pubs is no longer synchronizing because it's no longer part of the availability group. With DBATools, you can perform failovers. So at the moment, our instance is on SQL 1, and we would just run on SQL 2, invoke DBA AG failover, and again say, do you really want to? Yes, please. Let's go 3. Oh, hang on a minute. In general, as much as we can, it's really hard because SMO is awful at hiding error messages. We give you the information that you need. So we've got a nice warning here that says I can't fail over this database, this replica for this availability group, because it's set to a cluster type of none, because it's running in a container. So what you got to do is you got to use the force. So we just need to add this force in, and now it's going to have failed over. So now our new primary is SQL 02. We go and have a look at our availability group. We can see that we've connected to SQL 01, but it is now the secondary replica role. If you want to look here, you can see that our replicas have now flipped over from 1 to 2, so they're just beginning to catch up. Remember to fail it back so that the next demo works. Okay, I shall do just that. There we go. So any questions about availability group, or shall we just carry on?
Hi, Rob. I have a question. When have you last tried to set up the availability group using the DBATools command and not the SQL command?
Probably not for a few months, because all of my client work at the moment is in Azure. Why, have you done it recently?
No, I do not work with containers very often. I do all the availability group work on Windows machines. Yep. So I just want to know if there are any reasons that it does not work. But so if you ever have a chance to try the DBATools command and it does not work, please file an issue because it should work. But,
yeah. I mean, that's always the answer. Is if it doesn't do what you expect, then go and file an issue on GitHub, and people will come and fix it. But certainly, I've created hundreds and hundreds of availability groups with DBATools on Windows machines, and very rarely have I had problems that were due to DBATools. Normally, they're problems due to Active Directory or DNS or something like this. But it certainly works really well. I just like these containers because it just means anybody can use it. Anybody can do this.
That's right. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yep. I have something to say too. So if you use, be aware that if you use availability groups, that you also keep in sync with your logins. Because if you get out of sync with the logins, then you try to fail over to one node and the one node has a login. say A, and you fail over to another, and it does not have the login A, so you have to keep in sync. I think DBATools do have some commands for that too, I think, yeah?
Oh, well, I would say if only the next notebook that we were going to look at had something to do with logins.
Perfect.
So I love this notebook. I'm going to say that this one is going to be the last one of the presentation. You'll see there are some other ones down here, but this is a great notebook. I love this. It's a story of a login. So let's just set up our scenario. We're going to create a database called the Sock Factory app. It's a standing joke with myself and Gianluca Sartori that all we do is make sure that the socks come out of the factory. So 3 o'clock to Tuesday morning, because it's always 3 o'clock on Tuesday morning, you get a called out, and you're called out because it's the database's fault, and it's the database's fault because the connection is failing. So you open up your notebook, because you should have notebooks for this sort of troubleshooting, because it means at 3 o'clock in the morning you don't have to think so much, which is always good. And we'll go and we'll read our error log. So we're going to get our DBA error log from our instance, and we're going to look for any text to do with logins, and we'll just select the date and the source of the text. And when we do that, we see that we get login failed for the user Sock Factory app. It can't find a login matching the name provided. Oh, that's interesting. And you remember that a new replica was added to the availability group at the weekend. Maybe your DBA didn't add the logins correctly, and maybe databases failed over. So it's exactly what you were saying. Let's check for a login. So we're going to go to SQL instance 1, and we'll just look for our login, and we'll just look for our login. Oh, look. No. So we haven't got a login for our Sock Factory app user. So, all right, that's easy. We'll just create a login. And of course, never ever, except in demos, use convert secure string and a plain text password, but we can do it because we're all friends. So we're going to create our password, and you'll notice, of course, that the password follows the approved rules of all username and password or application authentication, in that the name of the user is the same as the password. So this is very important to remember. And we're going to check now that we have actually got our user. Have a look at our user. We've got a user now. Excellent. So send an email back to the user and say, hey, fixed it. Really sorry. 3 o'clock in the morning, I'll go back to bed. But unfortunately, the user comes back and goes, well, you know what? It's not working. Still not working. And you go, oh, well, that's strange. And so you run a query against the database. We'll just run this query. If everything's okay, it's going to tell me that all is well. Oh. Let's have a look in the error log again. So we'll open up the error log. We tried to log in here as our user. So you can see that we can create a SQL authenticated connection. Just log in this way, that's fine. Our error log says, this time, instead of saying could not find a login matching the name provided, this time it says, well, login failed to open the explicitly specified database Sock Factory app. Well, I wonder what the problem can be. And anybody who's spent time working with SQL instances will just be going, well, hang on a minute. This is going to be, does the user exist? User exists. The user exists. The login exists. What's going on? It's orphaned user. It's always orphaned user. So for DBATools, we've got a command called get DBA DB orphan user. And you can see that it goes to our instance and it goes, hey, we've got an orphan user called Sock Factory app user for the Sock Factory app. Excellent. So an orphaned user, for those that don't know, means that the SID doesn't match between our user and our login. So our login exists at a database level and our user exists at an instance level. And for SQL authenticated users, they need to be the same SID for when things fail over. So we can fix that really simply, and I love this command because now it's really easy. You click prepare, DBA, DB orphan user, and boom, that quick success. So let's run a quick test. This time we better test it before we tell the user. So we're going to do that, and straight away we get back the answer. All is well. So that's super good. And of course, when there's been an outage, there's normally people in suits who've had a good night's sleep and proper coffee who come and have Excel sheets that they want to fill in to find out why it went wrong and how we can make sure it doesn't happen again in the future. So what I do and what I recommend that you do is use those copy commands. Remember I said there was lots of copy commands? Well, we can use those in availability groups running in an agent job. And we can make sure that we sync all of the logins, all of the certificates, all of the agent jobs, all of the anything that you need to be on the same instance within an availability group. And I used to use this on an availability group with, I can't remember, 6, 8 nodes, plenty of nodes and all sorts of chaos happening. And what we did was we went through each replica and we said, great, for every replica, please, can you copy the logins from this master one that we said was always true? And we're just going to copy our login from that replica to all of the other ones. We just copied it over. So there's some things you need to remember about this. This copy DBA login command is going to copy the logins around, but it is not going to copy them if they already exist, unless you use the force. And if you use the force flag, it's going to drop all of the logins and then recreate them, which may not be what you want to do, especially for SQL authenticated ones, because then you're going to have to do repair or for user afterwards again to fix that problem we've just had. So just be careful that you do that. The other thing that it doesn't do, of course, is it doesn't remove logins. It's not making sure they're the same. It's making sure that all the logins that are on this instance are also on that instance. That's what its responsibility is. So again, that might not quite be what you need. The other thing which we learned, which we didn't realize, was that we had to say to people, make sure that replica number 1, the Uber replica that we must trust, is the one where you put the new logins or the new jobs or the new certificates or the new extended events or all the other things that we transferred around. Because if you put the login on replica number 7, this job will never pick it up because it's always coming from this one master one. So just keep your head and understand exactly what it's doing, and then everything will be good. And because I would say you should always do this with an agent job, I'm going to say that if you do things with an agent job, always follow the instructions at dbatools.io/agent, because they are why I don't have any hair. Because it took me years to work out the right way of being able to run PowerShell in a SQL agent job and for it to work like you would expect. So there's just a set of few steps there to follow to make sure it does what you want it to do. You do that, it'll be fine. If you try and do it in a different way, things might not work. It can do wonderful things, like the SQL agent job will always succeed. The PowerShell step will always fail, and you will never know until you go to find where your backups are, as has happened at a client of mine. So let's have a quick look at copy DBA login. So we'll grab our logins on SQL instance number 2, and you see SQL instance number 2 has got SA SQL admin, nothing else. But if we remember, then we had the sock factory user. So if we run this copy DBA login command, then now we will have sock factory user. Look there. There is our sock factory app user, and you can see that it skipped some logins because they already exist. It skipped some logins because they're system logins, and then it's been successful for the ones that aren't there. Okay, so last one, and one of my favorite ones. What we're going to do is we're going to get a report for management and to see which users exist on this instance and what permissions they have. So we're going to make use of another module called Export Excel, and we are going to get all of our user permissions with get DBA user permissions, which you can't see because you can see that at the moment. So I'll take that out of the way. With get DBA user permissions, and then we're also, with PowerShell, we're going to write an Excel sheet because management love Excel sheets, and we're going to make it pretty colors because management love pretty colors. And that means that it's going to look like, ooh, come up here, it's going to look like this. We look at our permissions. Ta-da! Now we can see which, we could pick some databases. And we'll pick the Sock Factory app. There we go. And then Sock Factory app, we've got DB role members, DB owner. We've got the SQL admin. We've got our Sock Factory app. What else have we got? If we go back to here and select all, normally I do this on a different database. Let's do that. Why are you? I know why, because you haven't got it running. That's why we're not doing it on that database. So I normally do it on my own instances on here because it's got a lot more funnier logins on it, you can see. But it's just a really neat way of creating something as our Sock Factory user. Writing an Excel sheet, completely dynamic. It's really neat. Okay, so I am going to not save that because we don't need it. And I am going to put that back up so you can see the things. If you go to the notebooks, you'll see there were further notebooks to do some other bits and bobs. Feel free to go and play with them, download them, have fun. That's the whole point of all of this. Anybody got any questions? Or is everybody too shy? Too shy is absolutely fine. We've managed to do this without any pussycats coming in, which was acceptable, I think.
For me,
No
it
questions.
was too much database stuff, Rob, but it was quite interesting for me.
Good. Interesting is all that we need, isn't it? Can we do piecemeal restore using DBATools? You can do all of the restores that you wish. Absolutely, definitely, my friend. So what you need to do is go to DBATool or search for DBATools and Stuart Moore and restore. And you will come up with 31 days of backup and restore, how to do the restore DBA database. What else have we got in here? DBATools to the backup, restore, rescue. Let's pick. There we go. Let's try this one. So here we go. Stuart's written 31 posts on doing DBATools backup and restores. So I'm pretty certain that what you can find on that series will do what you want, and if it doesn't, generally you can send him a contact and he will, in his own time, because he's a busy fella as well, he will help you to get to something that does something weird, because he likes those sort of challenges.
I think there's someone written also a blog post on how to create their own backup test server, I think.
Yeah, that would be well, Chrissy
Yeah.
certainly done that. So Chrissy Lemaire, test backup. There we are. So building a dedicated backup test server.
Yeah.
There we go.
I think it's also a good blog post, so really cool.
My favorite thing of Grant. And again, I love this. I had this and I use DBA checks, so I'll just give you a quick thing about DBA checks because it is my baby as well. I used this to create an instance and then restore the backups again and again and again and do dbcc check db and make sure they're all valid. And then I also use DBA checks to go and actually check that everything was as we expected. can report back. So that was really neat as well.
So I have another question. There is also a commandlet for installing instance. I think it's install DBA instance or so. Can you install a cluster with this commandlet?
We've gone to docs.dbatool.io and install DBA.
Arling data.
Yeah, so all of Eric's things, all of Brent's, Ola's, SQL Watch is excellent. Who is active from Adam Mechanic? Yep, so those are all good. Can you install a cluster? Is the question. Let's click on there. Let's make it not quite so big. Oh, which takes it all the way down to the bottom. Thank you very much. Best way of doing this, let's search for cluster. There's nothing in the help that says that you can. And
Rob, may I jump in?
Right?
Rob?
Go for it.
On the discussion section on GitHub, I posted a show and tell about installing cluster.
Okay.
Just go on the GitHub page.
So we can find the GitHub page, dbatools.io/git. Simple as that.
And there in the discussion and in the show and tell. Yes. And now we have using install DB instance to install and even uninstall install a failover cluster.
Ah, cool.
Answers your question.
Cool.
So, yeah, try to follow the instruction. If you have any problems, comment down below, and we'll have a look.
Yeah, it's a bit long.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No problem.
Oh dear, that's super good. I like that.
Really cool.
Yeah, I use DBATools to uninstall instances in my labs frequently, and yeah, build a little bit. There is another show and tell, I think, about uninstalling. It's yeah, it's not native. There's no uninstall DBA instance, but you can use install DBA instance to uninstall.
Wow, you pass the flag in because it's using setup.exe, can't you? So neat.
Yeah.
Clever. There we go. Any more for any more?
Also really cool. I automated the solution around the Ola scripts. Also adding the job schedules. Also, that's also really neat that you have this commandlets also. And also I think you have something with database mail also. So I use that also as a really cool thing. Yeah.
If only somebody had written something about that.
Yes.
Crikey Moses.
Yes. 2015. Yes.
Wow. My word. That was a long time ago. Anyway, sorry, you were saying.
Yeah, but it shows that you can. I think you can do nearly everything in SQL Server with DBATools. So that's really nice. If you look at the Microsoft SQL Server module, that's far behind from this really cool solution. Yeah.
There's 200 contributors and all of the testing and everything just concentrating on it, whereas the SQL Server module is it is part of one sort of team's job, and they've got to do everything else. They've got to do ADS, and they've got to do SQL CLI, and they've got to do SSMS, and they've got to do all of these other things as well. So
I also think only one folk I think is working on this module, or other more already.
I think it varies, but I mean, it isn't a one-person job. You're more than welcome, Damu. More than welcome. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, really good presentation. So
It is one of my favorite things in the world.
So okay, so if we don't have any questions for Rob, I will post the link to our YouTube channel where the video I think will be up, I hope, next week. And if not, then in 2 weeks or so. But I will tweet the link out if the video is when the video is available. And yeah, thank you for your presentation. Really good presentation. Thank you very much for being here. And
glad to see you.
Yeah.
And hopefully soon we will be in person in something somewhere.
I'm looking forward to that because I hope that I'm already registered because I put the I swapped the voucher to being at PSConf.eu next year, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to that.
That was with the recent email that went out.
Yes.
This cool. Yeah. I shall definitely see you then.
Yeah, I hope so.
I'm not sure whether I attend the conference. Maybe my boss does not admit to me. I'm not sure at the moment. Hopefully, I like to go to Vienna because I've never been there.
It's wonderful.
Yeah,
wonderful place. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah, I'm waiting for the hotel discount link to come out so I can pre-book.
Yeah, I mean, certainly there's a lot for us to do. So the next thing that happens is we ask for people to do sessions. So
yeah,